All right, so in today's lesson, they go from yesterday's of adding integers to today's subtracting integers. So it's not a whole lot different. But as I said yesterday, for some reason, students have a real hard time going from knowing that. Let's see, can't type and talk at the same time. Okay, so subtraction. The definition of subtraction is adding the opposite. So when you have an equation where you have 5 minus 3, you guys know that that answer is equal to 2, right? But when I throw some extra symbols in there, like this, 5 plus a negative 2, or I'm sorry, 5 plus a negative 3, that still equals 2, even though I have those parentheses around the 3, around the negative 3. Okay, what students have a hard time with is, in this case, this is the operation. And in this case, this negative represents the opposite. But these two equations mean exactly the same thing. So when we're subtracting, we're really just adding the opposite. So we're subtracting a positive 3 here, but we're adding a negative 3. I want you to start thinking about whatever the sign is in front of the number as not necessarily the operation, but the sign, the SIGN. So that we can be consistent when we start going and looking at solving for equations, we're always going to take that sign out in front. So if I have 1 minus a negative 2, the first thing that I would do is I would change this operation to addition and change this to the opposite, which is positive 2. Now, we always know a rule that says when two negatives are right next to each other, that means a positive. So this is the reason why, because subtraction is adding the opposite. So get used to changing those subtractions or just thinking about them as the sign of the values of the number. So 8 minus 13. So this is a positive 8. This is a negative 13. You're putting them together. If I think about my little did I use manipulatives with you guys yet? Little red and green things, red and white.
No.
Okay. Say you have 13 red pennies. Those are R's in there. And we have 8 green pennies. Those ones are green. So the green would represent positive and the red would represent negative. If we are adding those together, what happens with these 8 red and green ones? They cancel each other out, right? So we're left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red ones. Red represents negative, so that's a negative 5. That's one way of doing it. You can use manipulatives and just have two different things that one's positive, one's negative, and lay them out and cancel things out. Or 8 minus 13, we can look at the number line. Start at 0, we go positive 8. And then from there, we go back 13. So we've gone 8 here, so we have to go 5 more to get back for the negative 13. So that's another way of representing it. But what I want you to get used to is the fact that subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. So 8 plus negative 13 is a negative 5. And you're going to wonder, why are we making such a big deal about it? Well, and it comes into play more so when we're solving equations or solving for a variable, that this comes into play, because we're going to talk about taking the opposite of the plain numbers. So this really isn't that much different than what we did yesterday, other than it's with subtraction instead of addition. But I want you to change it to addition. Negative 10 plus a negative 6, or negative 7. There's my change of my sign, and this is the opposite. So subtraction to addition, and then taking the opposite of that number. Now this is a problem that you would have seen in yesterday's lesson, and you would say that that's equal to negative 17. They're starting to give you, and I can't remember if they gave you any of this yesterday or not, but they're giving you expressions that have variables in it. And it says A is equal to 5, B is equal to negative 8, and C is equal to negative 9. And they want you to figure this out based on this information. So when you do that, you're going to be doing a process called the substitution. Instead of writing B, you're going to write what B equals. And then you continue writing the rest of the equation. So negative 8 minus 10. So negative 8 plus a negative 10 is a negative 18. A minus B. So we're going to substitute in the value of A, which is 5. That minus sign from the problem stays there. And then we substitute in what our value of B is, which is negative 8. So we're just substituting in the variables. We're keeping the signs with the variable. We're keeping the sign of the problem. But now when we go to solve the problem, we're going to say 5 plus the opposite of a negative 8, which is positive 8, to get the 13. I'm going to do one more. C minus A. I'm going to substitute in the C and get negative 9. And I would say put parentheses around what you're substituting, especially when you have a negative sign, so that you can see where that negative sign comes from. That comes from the C. A we're substituting in is 5. The minus sign comes from the actual problem itself. So when we're solving this, negative 9 plus a negative 5 equals negative 14.